Hello. We're going to get started. Thank you guys for coming. I have some thank yous I have to do here. But you're here for the second Visiting Artists and Critics series lecture this semester. The UCCS, well, sorry, my name's Ben Kinsley. I haven't done this for a while, right? Presenting in front of people without a mask on. It's kind of cool. Thank you all for braving the in-person event. I'm Ben Kinsley, co-director and assistant professor in the visual art program, and I'm one of the organizers of the Visiting Artists and Critics series, also known as VACS. And the UCCS Visiting Artists and Critics series is in its 9th season, and it features a lineup of presentations by artists of national and international significance with the goal to foster understanding and appreciation of contemporary art through dialogue and critical conversations. Over the past 9 years, the series has been co-produced by the UCCS Galleries of Contemporary Art, GOCA, and the UCCS Visual Art and Art History programs. And invited artists and scholars come to UCCS campus to present public lectures and meet with undergraduate students in classes and workshop settings. The series is entirely supported with donations and grants, in particular the CU President's Fund for Humanities grant, Colorado Creative Industries Season Support, the UCCS Student Government Association, the B. Vredenberg Foundation, and generous donor gifts from through the UCCS Galleries of Contemporary Art and the VAPA programs. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming the Environmental Performance Agency, also known as EPA. EPA is an artist collective founded in 2017 and named in response to the ongoing rollback of federal environmental policy at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Appropriating the acronym EPA, the collective's primary goal is to shift thinking around the terms environment, performance, and agency, using artistic, social, and embodied kinesthetic practices to advocate for the agency of all living performers, co-creating our environment, specifically through the lens of spontaneous urban plants, native or migrant. Current EPA agents include Catherine Grau, Andrea Henke, Ellie Irons, and Christopher Kennedy, and the spontaneous urban plants of New York City and now Colorado Springs. Their exhibition, Undesirable Plants Declare, a public participatory review, opens this Friday from 5 to 8 p.m. at GOCA downtown at 121 South Tejon in the Plaza of the Rockies building, and it will be on view through October 29th. But we have 2 EPA agents who will be here in person for the opening, and there's going to be a lot of activity, so please try to come downtown on Friday. It's First Friday, it's Arts Month, there's a lot happening. So come downtown to GOCA downtown 5 to 8 p.m. on Friday to see the exhibition, and the talk tonight will give you a lot more context. Andrea has been here since Sunday, staying at the Heller Center for the Arts, working on the exhibition downtown, working with students, and it's my pleasure to welcome Andrea now to give you a talk about EPA.
Welcome, everybody. When I walked down here to come the first time here from the Heller Center, I was again, really my body really felt the landscape more taking in. I don't know this landscape yet, and it will take me years. But I felt that softness of the grasses, and that just was instilled in my body, and I wanted to bring it to you guys. And with that, I welcome you all, and I would encourage you right now, or invite you, giving away the front and the back, and spiral around yourself and see who else is in the room with you. Just spiraling around and see who's around you, so give up the front and your back. They are all our community. As we are gathered here right now together, I'd like to express my deep gratitude for such an amazing welcome from Ben, Sam, Corey, Abigail, Nick, Stephanie, Daisy, and UCCS, and the smell of fragmented sumac. When I came to the Heller Center, there was this amazing aroma. I had no idea what it was, but I just smelled it. The next day, in the morning early, I went around, and here there's a little branch of it. When you're rubbing it on your hand, it smells really intense. Because why it came to me, and I heard it because it's actually also in New York City. It's actually the Marsha P. Johnson State Park. There is a cultivator of this bush. And there I met actually that plant. And so it welcomed me as well. And I already saw other delegates, plant delegates, that will be together with us during the show here. Just like horseweed, that was right. Actually, when you go out here, out there are relatives of it. And with that, I also want to really acknowledge where we are. And I want to acknowledge I'm not alone here. That Ellie, Chris, Catherine, who are building our collective, I sense them in me, and you will hear them, their voice, and introduce you actually the whole project on the presentation. But before that, I want to say, I'm born on, as you hear, I have a little accent, on Alpine ancestors, and that's why I always have boots. And they work really well here as well. And as an EPA agent, I live and work on Lenape land, in now called New York City. And with that, I want to acknowledge that I'm a guest here. And with that, give deep respect. And I will not say the names correctly at this point, and I know it. But I hope over time I will learn the indigenous people names of the people, Yot, Cheyenne, and Urapawa, peoples and elders and ancestors, past and present and future. And as we all gather here right now together, I invite you to join me in that acknowledgement, that respect and gratitude for the land we are on right now. And I would like to that you actually taking your gaze a little away. Like just put the light a little away. You can, even if you want to close your eyes, or just soften your gaze. Notice each of us breathing, and maybe your torso feels the growing and shrinking movement with you right now. Take your time. We are not in a rush. Then take that breath, one of your breaths, down onto your footprints, down into your shoes. Take the second breath, the third breath, more and more down onto your footprints. Rooting yourself to the ground and beyond. Find a connection. And with that, I've put the question out, what is your relationship to this land? You don't need to have an answer, just sensing it when you hear this in your body. And then allow, slowly come back your breath into your eyes, and slowly let light come back in. Thanks everybody for, as a community, really question it. What is your connection to this land? And with that, I'd like to open up here on this article, Plants Declare, a public review. That's the show we will show. And as you see here, knotweed, right? It's a little rosette. And that's actually we found right on the side of the heller. And so to come to this knotweed and know what it asks you, you will hear Ellie introduce the EPA, and then you will hear Chris Agent introduce you one part of the project, and then Catherine about the participatory part of the project. And so it will be all on video. So you can put the light away from me right now, and so they can just focus there.
Hi, folks. This is EPA Agent Ellie Irons. I'm talking to you from Mohican Land in Troy, New York. I wanted to start this with a photo of some of us agents, since only Andrea can be there in person. We really wish we were all out there on the ground with you. But you should know that EPA Agent Mugwort, who we work with closely in New York City, is most likely living there with you too. So let's jump in. First of all, I want to say thanks so much to the team out in Colorado Springs making this happen. Ben, Corey, gallery interns and staff, and of course, Andrea and Knapweed. As I mentioned, I'm Ellie. I'm an agent of the Environmental Performance Agency, and I'm going to give you a brief introduction to our collective before I hand it off. We co-founded the EPA in 2017 at this site in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, in the wake of the 2016 presidential election. Here on the site of a former auto body shop, we engaged with a vibrant urban weeds garden, researching strategies for learning from and with spontaneous urban plants, framing them as our mentors and guides in weedy resistance. Coming from a range of backgrounds, design, choreography, environmental engineering, the sidewalk cracks, we named ourselves in response to the proposed defunding of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. In 2018, we went to Washington, D.C. to nominate our weedy collaborator Mugwort to the EPA's Science Advisory Board, as documented in this video of our press conference and planting.
Thank you everybody for joining us for the campaign kickoff to nominate Mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris, for the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Science Advisory Board. The Environmental Performance Agency's Department of Media Affairs officially kicks off its 2018 campaign for the nomination of Mugwort to the US EPA Science Advisory Board. Mugwort and its Department of Media Affairs colleagues will make a public presentation, including the delivery of comments collected from Mugwort's constituency. As an experienced rhizome biologist, Mugwort has a multi-pronged root system that can address a range of regulatory rollbacks at the US EPA. Mugwort has a proven record for fighting and not giving up, and will go deep to find new territories and new perspectives for the challenges facing the US EPA right now. As the only multispecies nominee for US EPA Advisory Board, Mugwort stands in solidarity on behalf of all life to imagine a world beyond human.
We wish our DC-based agent and their many rhizomes good health. More recently, we facilitated a training on acute air pollution in industrial Brooklyn and its environmental justice implications for both plants and people. We trained new EPA agents to wash plants near a cement factory in Bushwick, Brooklyn. The exhibition also included a score, or set of instructions, for physically confronting the 70-plus rollbacks to environmental regulations that had taken place under the Trump administration by May 2019. Engaging with environmental policy is an important aspect of our work. Our On Behalf of Life platform is a web project and workshop series that encourages folks to submit public comments to the US EPA on behalf of another life form. Comments are drafted after engaging with local plants to consider how human and non-human bodies will be affected by the policy change. The comments are submitted to a government website, regulations.gov, and become part of the public record. The kinds of workshop gathering you see here, building intimacy and solidarity between plants and people, has of course been harder to facilitate given the circumstances of our ongoing global pandemic. So we've adapted our approach, launching the Multispecies Care Survey, which is part of the exhibition you'll see here in Colorado Springs. And Chris will talk more about it shortly. Thanks so much for listening to me. Weedy solidarity. I wish I was there to root into the ground with you all. Bye.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for hosting the EPA and for coming tonight. And special thanks to Ben Kinsley and Corey Dreyth at UCCS for all their organizing efforts and time. My name is Chris Kennedy, and I'm an EPA agent. I'm recording this from the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Lipan Apache land in the city now known as Austin, Texas. In this section of our presentation, I'll give you a brief introduction to the Multispecies Care Survey project and explore how you can participate here in Colorado Springs. In 2019, after working for several years on eco-social and art projects around New York City and elsewhere, we began to collectively imagine what it would mean to develop and enact environmental policies that resist a tendency to center humans rather than other life forms. What would it mean to actively listen to plants and landscapes we encounter daily, and in particular the weeds and life along the margins? We began to think about the idea of a multi-species mode of thinking, to consider the needs and affordances of other species to be integral to any kind of long-term policy or effort to ensure our collective survival. What would a multi-species policy look like? What would it feel like? A policy that took into account the needs of other organisms and not just humans. And how do we create an interface for others to be involved in this process? At first, we imagined a nomadic tent that would traverse the 5 boroughs of New York City, gathering public input and participation along the way. Some of our initial planning began here at the Winter Workspace residency at Wave Hill, a cultural center and garden located in the Bronx, New York. Here we began to work with the public, using the notion of a land survey as a platform to begin gathering data, to engage in fieldwork, and to ask questions about multi-species care and connections. We eventually called the project the Multispecies Care Survey. The survey is a public engagement initiative that aims to gather as much data as we can to think through some of these larger questions of multi-species care and solidarity, especially in a time of extinction, and also to begin drafting a new piece of policy that we call the Multispecies Act. In many ways, a response to flawed or incomplete environmental policy that thinks seriously about what it would mean for plants to have rights, but to also go beyond human rights and personhood status, and to instead imagine something different altogether, drawing from the wisdom of other organisms, especially those on the margins. The survey project is a container, a meeting point, an opportunity to think through this, but also to engage in what we call local plant human care practices, to literally bring us down to the soil and the space of other organisms through touch and connection. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we reimagined the public project as a web platform that offers a series of protocols, prompts, or simple instructions for noticing and engaging with multi-species community through the safety of your window while social distancing. Visitors to the site can browse protocols developed for each season and participate directly through the website, uploading videos, images, and sounds depending on the protocol. This becomes a living archive and a set of data for us to work with in developing the Multispecies Act to really understand what it might look like and feel like. In each engagement, our embodied and somatic practice with plants becomes an opportunity to not only reconnect, but also to confront our own limitations and assumptions about nature, to become vulnerable, to get messy, to be intimate, and then to take action. Each protocol is paired with a tangible action the user can take in their own community, further reinforcing our role in dismantling a system of intensive resource extraction and disaster capitalism. In the spring, we invited communities to notice the multi-species lifeways in their community while in quarantine. Protocols like temperature check, clean your window, keep active lungs, and avian transmissions facilitate connection despite the COVID-19 pandemic. During the summer, EPA agent Andrea Hengi launched a moss summer camp, releasing a series of protocols that center the wisdom of moss, inviting communities to participate and engage. In the fall, we worked with international communities from across the world, inviting participants to look carefully at informal green spaces and tree pits in their respective cities. A suggested field study provides a comparative analysis between sites considered wild and those heavily maintained or manicured. We also invited participants to then locally identify land use policies that determine what happens in these informal spaces. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you planning in places like New York, for instance, it's actually illegal to have weeds or spontaneous plants over 6 to 8 inches on any public land or private land. The city deems them a noxious nuisance despite the wealth of benefits these plants provide, including stormwater retention, carbon sequestration, wildlife habitat, food and medicine, temperature reduction, and more. In Colorado Springs, a series of municipal ordinances makes it illegal to harbor so-called noxious weeds on any private or public land within the city limits in excess of 9 inches. Those who do not comply are designated a public nuisance and can be fined and ultimately jailed for inaction. In the winter, we embrace the return of dormancy and stillness, releasing a protocol called Winter Buddies, inviting participants to find a tree to nurture and engage with over the winter season. For the exhibition at the Galleries of Contemporary Art at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, we have created a space to share excerpts from the archive, which offer a snapshot of experiences during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic across the US and world. In the gallery, you'll find a video that explores each season of protocol and also invites you to participate in the survey directly. The EPA has also developed a specific protocol, especially for the show, called the Welcome Protocol. We invite you to participate using any mobile or desktop device by visiting multispecies.care or visiting us at the gallery in downtown Colorado Springs. Thanks so much for coming, and I'll see you all at the opening on Friday evening.
Before we go to the next artist, Just take a minute, it's a lot of information. Maybe just allow yourself to see where it sinks into your body, and especially the word weeds. Where is it in your own body? So close your eyes and wait for 30 seconds. We just quiet and just see what arises. Thanks for participating, and thanks for that you actually took time to notice and gain knowledge from your body right now. And with that, I'm going to the next artist, Catherine. So you can take the light down again, please.
Good morning to the residents of Colorado Springs and neighboring communities. We ask for your attention for a brief public announcement. The EPA is pleased to announce a public review process for nominating spotted knapweed and other relatives of the knapweed family into the EPA Advisory Board. Responding to the need of deepening the relations and communication between urban and rural communities, the Advisory Board has deliberated that a new seat be opened on the EPA Advisory Board for a rural representative and correspondent. A delegation of New York City-based members of the EPA Advisory Board will be present to oversee the process. This delegation includes mugwort, Public Community Relations Specialist, horseweed, herbicide resistance specialist, and first responder to disturbance, Virginia pepperweed, ancestral land protection strategist, Japanese knotweed, property and commoning consultant, and broadleaf plantain, plant-human cohabitation analyst. The public is invited from October 1st to October 29th to participate in the public review by providing insights into the skills, knowledge, relations, expertise, and wisdom of knapweed. Insights may be shared in the form of direct observations, recollections and memories, word of mouth and so-called popular knowledge, as well as citizen science and other forms of data collection. The delegation of New York City-based EPA Advisory Board members will assist with providing concrete practices for the public to recollect their insights, which may exist within deeper levels of sensorial embodied knowledge. The office will be open for public comment Friday through Sunday, 12 to 6 p.m., or by appointment at 121 South Tijon Street, office number 100 in downtown Colorado Springs. We thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much for listening. And at this point, I will sit down here and let's have a dialogue and a conversation. So you maybe have questions or more deeper want to hear things. So we will sit down here and have a conversation.
Does this work? Yeah. So we're asking anybody who wants to use the microphone, raise your hand, I'll bring it around. Keep your mask on. And if you have a thicker mask, you can feel free to push this against your mask so we can hear you, but don't take your mask off. I'll start with Jesse.
Hello. Oh, hello. So I guess I'm wondering, how exactly did you find EPA, and like what made you want to get into the, what's the word I'm looking for? The group, I guess.
What? I didn't hear that.
What made you join EPA, and what were your reasons behind it?
Okay, we actually created the EPA, so it's not that we joined the EPA. So we are not the Environmental Protection Agency, we are the Environmental Performance Agency. So what made us, I guess it's a little more than 4 years ago, 4 years and a half, right? I had the space already in Crown Heights, and I worked already with plants there and met Ellie, Catherine and Chris and others. And then when I actually deeply worked with mugwort, which has a rhizome, the roots, it told me I should not be the last year, because I was 5-year lease at that space, to be there. And then that's when I said, like, mugwort tells me I should not be alone, so let's ask the others. And when we came together, that was actually Chris, we talked more, and we all had the same kind of, were very upset what happens with, and I don't say his name because I never want to say his name, T, what's going on. And we decided we have to do something. So we decided, and Chris came actually with the name, so why we don't call ourselves Environmental Performance Agency and instead of Environmental Protection Agency, and play with that. So at that time I had already my gray suit, and then right after, when we made the decision, I put the EPA on it and started to really like thinking about what means working with these plants, not only on a sensorial level, but also thinking politically. And that's where it came from. Did I answer it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm always answer truth stories, so yeah.
I'll have a follow-up, actually. We were talking in the car this morning, and I think it was interesting that how you were talking about, you didn't start feeling like you were really understanding the place you live, New York City, until you started working with plants. Can you tell everybody that story?
Yeah, it was, and it really recalled to me that I came this more realization when I started work with plants 7 years ago, because out of the studio I had as an artist, like a loft, and then out of real estate, I had to give it up. And so I looked for a space, and I was like, I want to be more connected. That I knew, but didn't think really working with plants or thinking too much about land. I worked at that time more about architecture. And that's when I found this ground floor, and it was this garage, and there was nothing there, it was winter. And then these little green plants came, and I'm like, what is this? I feel distance. And you know, you hear, I come from a little village from called Boswil in Switzerland. I grew up totally in the woods and everything. And I was like kind of shocked that I was really in distance. I was like, whoa, what happened to me? And at that time I was already 20 years in New York City. And I was like, what happened? And so I then asked myself, like, so how I can meet them through my art? And, you know, I'm a choreographer and visual artist, how I can meet them. And that was my question. So then at that time was also Occupy Wall Street happening and all that. And it's like, I cannot have always agency. So how I do that not having agency? And I said, what about they would have agency? And so I had to build methodologies, and I'm still working that because you always fail, right? You're like, in the end, it's still your artist's mind. I'm like, no, I have to find other ways that they can have agency in the work. But when I came, like, and I'm jumping now, I was actually traveling. I was 3 days ago still in Switzerland. And then, no, I was in Italy, and then in Switzerland, and I came here. Because after 2 years, I had the privilege, and I see this as a privilege, I could fly back. And I was hiking, got the boots, I was hiking way up into the Alps, to the glacier. And this was very strange. My whole skin got really kind of very vibrating, and I felt that is my home. And then I realized that actually in New York City becomes now a little more home, because I'm really trying to understand the land, and with that also the people. For me, it's all about the relationship, and that's why it's like, who was the first steward, what this means even. And it's just strange to know, like, it will take me probably, who knows how long I will stay still in the land here, right, in this continent. But it will probably take a lifelong to find that depth that naturally is in my DNA. And so that's why I think also I sense a lot of violence on this land when I do work, and my colleagues too when we do sometimes things. And so how you deal with that. And so I question always myself, like, I'm now settled in here, right? I'm a guest, but in New York City, I kind of settle in. I'm over 20 years in there, I could say. So what this means, what's the responsibility when I'm not directly from that land? What kind of relationship do I need to build? And who are the people around me to building it with, right?
Hi, I'm interested in your in the collective's choice to focus on weeds, and I think it's a really rich place to, like, I don't know if it's where you began in your non-species focus, or non-human species. I'm sorry, and what. What is that? Where is that your point of orientation for the collective right now, or are there other non-human species, and why are you focused on weeds?
Okay, well, actually, why probably my first accident too, like that grew up in that lot I was in. It's a spontaneous plant that coming, right? And with that, when I work with that, you find other artists too who working with it. So all of them worked before already as well with spontaneous plant. And it's just the difference to think and filter of what means if you plant a plant. And you as a human make decision where it has to go, or when a plant come naturally out. I call them spontaneous plant, I call them resilience plant. But obviously in the industry, they're called weeds. And it's a whole policies around it. That seems very interesting to me, more and more, like, what is this thing? And it's really interesting when I came here, and as I said, I'm a guest here, and I need to hear your guys' knowledge, but since I know horseweed pretty well, because it's in New York City, and I have very attuned with it, when I see it here, I know exactly why it's there. I was like, oh, they must have done something probably 6 months ago on that spot, and it's one of the first plants that comes. That likes to come, and that's why I call it sometimes the Red Cross plant. It comes, it stays for 2 years, and then actually leaves afterwards if you don't interrupting it. So it also gives like our relationship. These plants actually are very close to us. They wouldn't not be there if it is not of us. And so in that sense, you really can build also that relationship. And obviously with that, as you see our logo, right, there was also the rat in there. Like other species obviously are a part of it as well, right? But we focus on the plant as an inroad. It's one of the, animal is more to our skeleton, right? So we feel closer, we have faster empathy, right? But the plant is quite a challenge to find a relationship, right? And with that, I want to acknowledge there is a lot of communities and indigenous community who have natural this relationship, and we need to learn from them. But I cannot copy them as an artist. I can only learn from them, right? So I need to find my own methodologies, and in a collective, it needs a collective to even build that. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about plants and the connection you're making to people and land. Do you all as a group also think about plants being non-native or invasive? So mugwort is actually a non-native plant to the United States, and it's originally from Dutch colonial coming to New York. So that's a plant that is not native to the United States. And it just popped in my mind that this connection between, humans coming to places that they're not native to, that plants also may experience this process of not being in the space that they're originally from and then having to root into that space.
You are absolutely right. You said it so beautifully, and it's the other ones we have. We have at the gallery. You will see we have also like broadleaf plantain, right? Which one sometimes is called white man's footprint. That again is a plant that came originally from Europe, special, and its goals was. The Native Americans called it white man's footprint because every time the Europeans would go on a land, that's when that plant came. And it is very interesting here to see too where it is, because it's like first Sam, and by the way, Sam is great. She helped a lot. We were in connection with her already 3 weeks in advance, and we sent her to field work. And anyway, so she showed us some plants, what is here, and then I was like, but broadleaf plantain must be somewhere here. And so I looked at the lawns, and the lawns are so perfect downtown, like there's barely anything in. But on the edge, I found it. So it made totally sense again that plant is where it's moist, where the Europeans came in with their idea how you should deal with land. So yes, and I agree, we need to also think, what is this for the plant? Always be in that place, right? Not for only for us being. So thanks so much for sharing. Did you say your name?
My name's Rachel. So I have a past life working as a park ranger in New York, which is why I know these strange things. And it was also used to brew beer. That's why they brought it over as a hops.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, maybe that's better. Just to kind of respond to the question that was just asked, I have actually a couple questions. The first would be, so how do you kind of conceptualize, or how do you include plants that are non-native that also have a fairly damaging effect on native ecosystems? I'm thinking, there's so many examples, but I'm thinking out here of the Russian olive tree that tends to populate waterways and actually changes the nitrogen composition of the soil and kind of chokes out native plants and has an effect on insect and bird life and other fauna. So that's the first question, and I can wait to ask you the second one if you want to tackle that one first.
Because that's already a big question. Right?
Okay.
This question comes always up.
Yeah.
And then at that moment, I'm like, okay, the question came up again, because that's the question of the industry.
Yeah.
That's the question out there. So I right away go in as an artist, and you said, a word you said, it's damaging. You used the word damaging. Mm-hmm. In my brain, in the language, I try to actually find another way than damaging, to actually even address what this means. And so I'm like, okay, say it like we have at the gallery Japanese knotweed, right? Which we know it can take all riverbeds if it likes. It has that power, right? Because it has no competition of any insect. Mm-hmm. But also it came as a cultivated oriental plant that we bring in because we liked it. And then it liked it more. So I think we need to address this in general very different, because that's the surface level, yes. But how we can address the deeper level of this, that we need to find changes, mm-hmm. which is the level how we have relationship in general to the land. Mm-hmm. The violation we do daily and the extraction that's happening. So therefore, these plants can teach us actually something, mm-hmm. instead to think, oh, we just need to pull them out and put more Roundup and more other things. And honestly, they always come back. It makes it actually worse. Horseweed, at this point, was one of the first plants who you can give Roundup, and it already changed their DNA and can handling it. So it doesn't die off. It actually gets bigger. It's now super wheat at some place. We're making them actually even stronger, mm-hmm. by trying to take him away. Mm-hmm. So I was saying there's a deeper level. That's why I invite them. That's why I need to find a relationship. It's not their fault. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and then how you can deal with that. And what means then regeneration of land? Mm-hmm. And that's what is the practice when I had the lot. Yeah, mugwort was the one who liked it right away. And yes, it spread out. It was like, yes, I'm here. And I'm like, oh, there's a little one over there. And so I tried to first not doing anything, just to listen quite a long time. And then I would not weed. I called it airing out. Even find other words. Just give a little air over there so that one can come. And then I wait again. I sit back, and they have an agency. So it's more a dialogue. Mm-hmm. You know, a symbiosum dialogue. Let's have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Instead, like, let's get this away, and then you're just building it back up, and it never really fully works.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the way, I mean, I think your curiosity and your generosity is really striking to me, and that's so beautiful, and I love the way that you question language, and the way that we use language to expose our values, the values that we impose upon the land, impose upon certain plants, certain places. So before you came, I think Ben and I were talking about language like how we talk about those kinds of plants as being invasive or colonizing. And those are kind of interesting words because they also kind of demarcate parts of a political spectrum, to colonize, or especially under T, some of the words that were used during that administration. So it's really interesting to kind of question that and to think about the world that we live in from a different vantage point, for sure. So that maybe leads me to my second question, which is what's your criteria to decide on what plant becomes the next member of the EPA, so you chose knapweed for Colorado Springs. How did you choose that?
Well, yeah, which I actually, thinking back, you know, that I learned the lesson next time, make a faster connection with Sam or with anybody else in Colorado. So we did this actually we decided, let's go backwards. Let's look what the city says who is not good. Like, who should not be anymore in Colorado Springs? So it said very clearly, knapweed. If you have knapweed, you know, there's 3 different types, the spotted knapweed, the diffuse knapweed, and the Russian knapweed. If you have them, you're not allowed to have them, you have to take them out. You know, and so it was this, and that's the title of the show, Undesirable Plants Declared. That's in there, actually, in their policy. And some people were like, undesirable plants? Well, that's a new way to say it, you know. And I was like, okay, let's then declare. So we are really interested in the knowledge of the community at this point. So that's why we invite you to come to the gallery and then give your knowledge, what you have knowledge of that plant. And then we see where it goes. Because we were like, what it would mean to invite them. And we were reading too, that a lot of time it came in, and we don't know if that is true. That's all like somebody wrote on the website, right? That it came in through in agriculture when they bring seeds in, and it was contaminated seeds. And and when they're used in agriculture, and then it found its place. And each of these knapweed that I learned has a very different effect especially on agriculture. That's why we say here the connection between rural and city. And I think we need to come a time we cannot split them anymore. They are connected, and so it's also inviting that plant in our delegation. Then we maybe get also to the rural, to the agriculture thing. So we'll see what the community gives us. We don't know anything. We're actually quite clueless. But I was very excited because I had no idea about the plant besides the picture. And so when I was in Europe, I saw it in Switzerland, in a tree pits in the city. And it's from the same family, but not the same. Like, you know, when you have different types. And then when I was in Italy, where it was really in the Toscana, I saw the spotted knapweed, and it was right on the edge of agriculture. Like, there was all the fields that was like quite overused agriculture, and there it was. So I did some movement herbariums on it. I have a certain way to attune with it, to attune myself to here. And I think that's why it called to me. I was kind of looking at it. I knew it's on dry places. But then I kind of like, I'm tired after a 2-hour walk. And then I walked up to the Heller Center, And there it was on the sidewalk. And I made a picture and sent it to Sam. I'm like, yes, it exists here. Because at a certain point we thought, because Sam, and you can talk, Sam, on yourself. Maybe, Sam, you can share what you tried to do. And she could not, it was not finding in the city. And we were like, oh, now we say it in this exhibition, this plant, and it's nowhere. So what this even means, you know. So that was very interesting. If you want to share something, Sam.
Yeah, so I've been doing some field work for the EPA for a little while now, and we were trying to find knapweed like within a short distance from the gallery downtown, and I was like, okay, that shouldn't be hard. There's no shortage of weeds in Colorado, so this should be easy. And I was like walking all around downtown. I went towards the new Paralympic Museum, and there's tons of weeds down there, and I was like, okay, I'll find it here, because it was next to the train tracks, and the report that you sent me said like it could be found in rocky areas alongside the roads and things like that. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna find it. And then I didn't, and I was like, oh my God, she's gonna get here and I'm not gonna find it, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then we had our weekly meetings together, and you asked me like, where do you think it could be? And you asked me like, where I've seen it before, because I know I've seen it before, and you like had me close my eyes and think about it. And like I told you, it'd be like in a place where Heller is, like a field of grass surrounding it. And literally like the second day you were here, you found it at the Heller Center, and I was like, what the heck? So yeah, I just thought that was interesting, that like I kind of subconsciously knew where it would be, but like I obviously didn't physically go there to look for it because we were trying to stay within Goka territory. So I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and that really was also interesting. We gave her the last fieldwork assignment we gave, that she would ask other people, just go ask them and ask them if they know about knapweed, what they know or what they can remember, right? And it was very difficult for you, right? So, but what was really nice when we did it on Zoom with her, when I let her imagining it. And actually a lot of things come up from her own body when I moved you through. So that's why we say some people will know it from the knowledge that they hear from somebody else. Others will be encouraged to listen inside their body when they see the image. Did they think they saw this once before, this plant somewhere in their lifetime? And each little details will then, everybody can write on this wall and on the floor in the gallery, and in the end we will have a map, and then we will find out what is all about this knapweed in this city that is actually really in their thing, that this is, you're not dangerous. Then we get more information, knowledge. So that's a very big part and in the exhibition actually. So we want that you collaborate with us. So on the opening on Friday, I can help people move through, and the plants on the other side. You see plants and they are QR codes that teach you a little how you can attune.
This has been wonderful, thank you. I really enjoyed the part in what we watched about COVID and how the interaction with the community, like the little things, you know, as far as looking out your window, cleaning your window, things like that. And I've been really curious about like foraging or finding weeds that are in fact either medicinal or edible. And I'm wondering if that's a focus that you guys take often, or because there's so many weeds that are like have all these values that we, you know, douse in all kinds of things. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight of like where to start with that kind of like knowledge, or what we can do as just participants in promoting like their wellness, because it intrigues me that there's so many growing here that I'm seeing or being told to pull, when in fact, you know, the idea I guess the idea of permaculture is just fascinating to me, and what we can do as a community to like boost that.
So I think I hear you. Yeah, I agree with the foraging. Like all of the plants that we talk, let's say like mugwort, right, is a plant that actually sometimes really offers that you would actually, and I'm always thinking if the word use is the right word. I'm trying to find another word, but it offers sometimes in itself. For if it's so abundant, right, it's so big that it offers the medicines. The questions that I have, because when I see mugwort in Europe and mugwort here now, like in New York City, it's the same, but they feel very different. They even have a different chemical, they smell different, the intensity is different. So I think it would be very interesting to start slowly to explore mugwort, maybe for knowledge that you know from other people that you read, like for what is mugwort good, and then just tiny try it out. I mean, we as a collective didn't go there. We did it so far that we made dream pillows of mugwort because we had so much on that place. And when we harvested some of them, we made dream pillow, and they really worked. So you put the dried leaves in a little pillow, and then you sleep with it, and your dreams get really more intense. But that happened only by accident because I did an artwork with one of the plants. I unrooted it, and then afterwards bring it back and used it for a performance work, and I had it in my space, and suddenly my dreams increased. So then I was like, oh yeah, I was reading it is for dream. So you need to try out on yourself as well, right? Some people do this very serious foraging, everything. Ours, a collective, our main focus is first to build a relationship. And then maybe in the near future we will go more also like what is the healing properties on it. But right now we really focus very much policies and creating a relationship with, because too fast we always want to use it, and then you take away the relationship. Like what means when you like something offers, what is you giving back? Are you already have the consent? When is the consent? What this means? And I think, there's a lot of people, again, indigenous and other things who actually live on that, right? Their whole life, they have that deep connection. For myself, I take it very slow because I can feel I sometimes cannot sense them in the sense of healing yet. Also, it's like New York City. It's like, the soil. It's like, okay, lamb's quarter you could eat, but do you want to eat lamb's quarter on the soil where the dog's peeing? Right? So, because that's what they're taking up. So, and I'm like, okay, so how you deal with that, right? So it's like, I don't know if I answered you, but I think it takes really a lot of time to think that. I just knew something very strange happened to me in Switzerland, so I maybe will think more. I was up into the Alps, and they made a tea. They always have in Switzerland, when you go up higher hiking, there's always a restaurant there in the end, which is nice. But they had a tea, and it's called with 5 herbs, that they foraged on that land where you drink the tea. So drink this tea, and my friend too. And my friend is not an artist and is not in this plant thing. So when the tea was finished, after 20 minutes, we were like, something is different. So we walked down the hill, and everything felt amplified. It felt like the tree, I still feel it, the tree was part of you, and I'm like, no, this is too spooky. I'm probably tired, but my friend had the same thing. So I'm thinking because the plants were on that land and somebody knew how to mix that tea, that we actually could hear more the energy of the wood. So there is something about that. So I'm finally like, oh, maybe I need to try in the city what this means. But that's just me. The other collective artists don't think that way yet because they didn't have this experience yet. But for myself, I'm thinking, what would it mean if I explore the strength of the spontaneous plants, which really are strong in New York City because they're sometimes tall. I was once in a field, I was inside, I had to leave in 2 minutes because it was so intense. I was not coughing or sneezing, I just felt dizzy in my head. I was like, they're talking so loud I cannot maintain as a human being. They're on a different place than I am. But maybe try a little out with them in that sense, that would be interesting. Because I think there's maybe new properties. And not because always you see in the books what is in the 12th century or 14th century, but these plants change too, as we do in our, and I think they change faster. Like their cellular thing is in 2 years they can change. That's why they're so adaptable. Like we are much slower to change our evolutionary process. Yeah, good question. I just say go for it, but create a relationship first. Yeah.
We have time for one more. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
I have a yes/no question and sort of a sidebar question. Well, firstly, have you ever been mistaken for the Environmental Protection Agency, either online or in person? And that seems like it could be fun. And secondly, when you were talking about those herbs and that restaurant, it made me think of Benedictine, like a schnapps, or just like those historical schnapps. And have you ever done anything with that, like experimenting with things that you could make with, like, looking back at the history of
No, I never did that with the schnapps. No.
Well, they have like 1 million plants in them, or like lots of ingredients, but mainly the first question, I was mainly curious.
The first question, when I go around with the EPA and special, you need to put yourself in that place, but it's happened to me in New York City. When I have the suit on and go out there, I had a few people coming up to me. One person came up to me and said, "Oh, thanks so much that you are here and taking care of this sidewalk. I would like to get involved in the Environmental Protection Agency. Can I volunteer?" So I do recognize the power. Or like when this was when you saw the little film, that was in Washington, D.C., right in front of it, right, where all the offices. When we planted that mugwort, nobody came out and told us not to do it. I was so surprised. That's why I did it so fast. It's like, somebody will come. But nobody came. Because that plant is in front of that building now. And so there is power in that, but then also you need to carry that power, and that takes responsibility. And I'm a performer, right, as well. So for me, this is a little easier than some of the other collectives. So when it came to plant this, I was like, okay, I'm doing it. It's easier for me to get into that role. And for the others, it's sometimes a little more difficult because they come up from that embodiment of, okay, if you have this on, that means there is a transformation. I mean, it's not a custom. It is something else. It can read, and it really depends how I walk. If I just walk normally around like this, nothing will happen. I walk like this, somebody will ask me a question. So it's really also your body language, and if you actually sometimes look at people when they are in these positions, you'll be taking body language for certain responsibilities. So I know I have to live in it. But I sometimes play with it, yeah.
I just want to thank you. I think we're basically out of time, but thank you, Andrea, and thank you, everybody, for your questions. And let's, hopefully we'll see you on Friday downtown, at downtown Goga, from 5 to 8. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. See you guys.